I could not believe that this was happening to me. An ordinary trip home turned into a struggle for survival. The ending will amaze you. The plane touched down early, 10 minutes ahead of schedule. I didn't text Alice like I usually did. Sometimes I like to surprise her, remind her that I still made the effort, even after all the years, all the flights, all the time apart. She usually sent a sleepy emoji or a photo of the kids with cereal-stained faces. But this time, I wanted to walk through the door unannounced. The Seattle sky was its usual gray, rain light enough to ignore. I turned onto our street, familiar cracks in the pavement, the neighbors' hedges trimmed too perfectly. But then I saw him, tall, young, maybe mid-20s, walking out of our garage in a black tracksuit. He didn't look startled, just gave me a nod like we were familiar, like he belonged. Then he turned and jogged down the street, earbuds in, like it was his damn neighborhood. I walked in a minute later, my keys clenched in my hand. Alice was folding laundry in the dining room, calm as ever. Her hair was up, yoga leggings, one of my shirts. I asked about the guy. She smiled and said, "New yoga coach. It's just easier this way." I let out a laugh, kissed her cheek, the kind of moment that should have eased suspicion. But something inside me didn't settle. Something stayed twisted, low in my chest. Later that night, I took the trash out. That's when I saw the champagne bottle. Dom Perignon, 2008. The real deal. Empty. In a house where neither of us drank anymore. After our son's birthday disaster last year, she poured every bottle we had down the sink. But this one had been opened, shared, and tossed. Quietly, carefully. I didn't say anything. I just stood there for a while staring at it, listening to the crickets and distant hum of traffic. Then I went back inside and watched her finish up the dishes like nothing had changed. The next few days I flew to Phoenix, then San Francisco. The usual routes. She sent me photos of the kids baking cookies, flour everywhere. Her smile in those pictures was so perfect, it felt like a damn mask. I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was the jet lag, or just my brain working overtime. But then I noticed the credit card charges, high-end watches, boutique perfume, jewelry. None of it in the house. When I asked, she said they were gifts for coworkers who were transferring. Said it casually, like it wasn't thousands of dollars, like it wasn't strange at all. Still, I tried to keep calm. I didn't want to be the paranoid husband checking receipts. But then, while I helped our son glue the wing onto his model plane, he whispered something to his sister, low and casual like a secret between kids. That man came over again while Dad was gone. He didn't know I'd heard. His sister didn't say anything. She just kept drawing, coloring in her castle like nothing was wrong. I finished helping him, kept my smile on, then stepped outside. Sat in my car for a long time, not starting the engine, just staring at the windshield. My hands were tight on the steering wheel. My thoughts were worse. I didn't know if it was panic or anger, but I could feel it building, slow and cold like water rising in a locked room. That night I didn't sleep much. She read a book in bed, flipping the pages with this soft rhythm like everything was normal. The kids were asleep down the hall. The house was quiet, still, but every sound felt off, too sharp, too deliberate. The fridge hum, the old clock ticking in the hallway, even her breathing beside me. The next morning her phone buzzed on the bathroom counter. I didn't check it, just glanced at the screen. D. Miller. No emoji, no contact photo. Just the name. She walked in a second later, smiled like nothing was wrong, kissed my shoulder, walked back out. I stood there, toothbrush in hand, staring at the screen that had just gone dark. That name didn't sound like a yoga coach. It didn't sound like anyone she ever mentioned. But it stuck in my head, echoed there like the start of something bad. I didn't confront her, not yet. But I started watching, started paying attention to the way she avoided certain questions, to how often she was busy now. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to admit it. But something was breaking under my feet. And I knew whatever was coming next wasn't going to be simple. It was already starting to unravel. I started keeping a quiet log, not some formal spreadsheet, just short notes in my phone. Times she left the house, names she mentioned in passing, receipts that didn't make sense. At first, I convinced myself it was just precaution. I wasn't jumping to conclusions, but every entry added weight to the pit forming in my chest. Something was wrong, and I wasn't imagining it. The next flag came from the joint credit card, a $500 charge from a luxury jewelry store downtown. I'd never been there. When I asked Alice about it, she said it was for a coworker named Kayla who was transferring. Said she wanted to get her something special. I smiled, nodded, but I didn't know any Kayla. She'd never come up before. Later that night, I looked up the item number listed on the receipt. It was a rose gold bracelet. Something intimate. Something that didn't feel like a work goodbye. Another day, 2 high-end perfume purchases popped up. Nearly $400 total. But the bottles weren't in the house. When I asked her where they were, she casually said she'd already gifted them to the same coworker. Same story, different lie. I let it slide again, but the thread was unraveling faster now. Then I overheard the kids again. I was walking down the hall with a pile of laundry when I heard our son whisper to his sister, "He came back yesterday." Mom said not to tell Dad. I stopped cold. The words didn't echo. They landed, solid and sharp. My daughter didn't respond, just kept drawing with her markers like she didn't hear anything unusual. I backed away before they noticed me and dropped the laundry in the bedroom without a word. The next morning, I couldn't look at Alice without picturing the guy in the tracksuit standing in our garage. I tried to act normal, took my coffee to go, kissed her cheek. She smiled like always. But something in her felt distant, office. Or maybe I was just finally seeing her for what she was becoming. At work, things boiled over. I snapped at a co-pilot for a harmless joke, misread a checklist, had to redo it in front of the crew. That had never happened to me before, not once in all my years flying. After we landed, I told the airline I needed some time off. Medical reasons. They didn't press. I flew back home that same night without telling Alice. I spent the next few days avoiding the house as much as I could. I walked the river trails, burned through miles without feeling my legs. The cold air helped clear my head, but not enough. I needed to talk to someone who understood the dirt behind the surface. That's when I ran into Jake. He used to be military like me. Now he worked in digital forensics, mostly corporate stuff. We hadn't talked in years, but when we saw each other near the waterfront, it felt easy, familiar. We got drinks that night. I told him everything, how it started, what I'd seen, what the kids said. Jake didn't interrupt, just listened. When I finished, he leaned forward and said he could help. Off the books. He'd look into her financials, dig up anything buried. Just don't drag the kids into it, I told him. He nodded, understood. A few days later, he called, told me to meet him outside a diner where no one would recognize us. We sat in his truck, windows fogging while he pulled up details on a tablet. Alice had been transferring money for months, small amounts, then larger, into an account under the name Devin Miller. That was the name from her phone, D. Miller. Jake said the account was linked to expenses tied to another apartment, Uber rides across town, upscale groceries, boutique shopping. "This isn't just cheating," he said. "She's building something behind your back." My head started pounding. I leaned back in the seat, trying to breathe through the weight in my chest. Every instinct I had tried to push the truth away, but it was already too late. I knew. I'd known for weeks. This just gave it shape. When I got out of Jake's truck, the wind had picked up. The first cold drops of rain hit my face, and I didn't even flinch. I walked the streets without a destination, thinking about every lie I'd been fed. Every night I was gone, every smile she faked, every time I told myself to let it go for the sake of our kids. This wasn't just betrayal, it was calculation. She wasn't having an affair. She was carving a path to leave me behind, financially, emotionally, completely, and I was done standing still. I didn't say a word to Alice. Not that night, not the next. I couldn't. Not yet. I needed to keep control, not tip my hand too soon. If she was planning something, trying to bleed me out while building a future with this Devon guy, I had to stay 2 steps ahead. The lies weren't just small anymore. They had structure. And the second I reacted emotionally, I'd lose whatever edge I still had. So I played along. I smiled when she asked if I wanted extra syrup in my coffee. I kissed her goodbye like nothing was wrong. Inside, though, my stomach churned every time I saw her laugh at a text or take a call just out of earshot. I started pretending to sleep, keeping my breathing steady until she slipped out of bed to message someone in the hallway. Always low-voiced, always gone a few minutes too long. I kept recording the times, what she wore, how long she was gone. Every little detail felt like a breadcrumb leading to something bigger. Then one night, it all cracked. I'd just gotten into another shouting match with a junior captain on the tarmac in Portland. Nothing major, but enough to make me see I needed distance from the cockpit for a while. I told the airline I was taking a week off, said it was for health, and maybe it was. The kind that doesn't show up on scans but festers behind your ribs. Back in Seattle, I drove to a quiet overlook by the water and parked. I needed silence, something solid to think in. And just as the sun dipped low, bleeding orange into the Puget Sound, I saw an old face jogging past on the gravel trail. Jake. He slowed when he recognized me, sweat darkening the collar of his hoodie. I waved him over. We sat on the hood of my truck, sharing the kind of silence only two ex-military guys know how to sit in. Then we ended up back at his place with a bottle of scotch and a laptop. He said he'd kept digging since the last time we talked. What he found made my hands go cold. Alice wasn't just transferring money, she was covering tracks, routing payments through freelance contractor invoices tied to fake LLCs. The money all ended up in the same account, Devon's. It looked like something out of a bad spy movie, but Jake had receipts, digital ones, transfer logs, even images from property management systems showing Alice listed as an emergency contact for an apartment Devon leased on Capitol Hill. Jake leaned back, eyes hard. "This isn't just cheating, Tom. This is a setup. If you hadn't caught it now, she'd have buried you." I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the screen, one hand gripping the edge of the table. The apartment, the perfume, the tracksuit. It all clicked. Every image in my head now had a name, a pattern, a motive. She wasn't just sleeping with another man. She was funding his life with my name and trying to walk me off a financial cliff while she smiled across the dinner table. That's when I decided to turn the game around. 2 days later, I booked a fake work trip to Denver. I let her help me pack. I left my itinerary printed out on the kitchen counter, knowing she'd look at it the moment I walked out. But I didn't fly anywhere. Instead, I drove across town, checked into a cheap motel under a different name, and set up remote access to the hidden cameras I'd installed the day before. One in the living room, one angled toward the garage door, and one near the staircase. Discreet, out of sight. I told myself it was for proof, not revenge, not yet. On the second night, just past 9 p.m., the feed lit up. Devon. Same tracksuit, same buzz cut, same casual arrogance like he'd walked in through a door he owned. He didn't knock, just entered with a key. Alice met him by the couch. She smiled. That smile, soft, familiar, was one I hadn't seen in years. She used to give me that smile when I came home from training, before the kids, before her eyes started going somewhere else when I talked. Now it was his. They didn't talk much. She poured him a drink. He sat close, real close, her head on his shoulder. I didn't watch the rest. I closed the laptop and sat there, frozen in that cheap motel bed, listening to the ice machine click outside the door like some dull metronome counting down the end of a life I thought was real. I left the motel at dawn, drove straight home but didn't go inside. I pulled into a gas station nearby, just waited. Something in me had gone quiet, like a switch had flipped. When the mail truck rolled by around noon, I saw the envelope before the driver even reached the porch. Cream-colored, stamped. I knew before I opened it, it wasn't a bill. Inside was a receipt for a wedding photo shoot. Alice's name, Devon's name, scheduled for the end of next month. Studio paid in full. I stood on the curb reading it twice. Then I folded it neatly and walked back to the car. When Alice got home that evening, I didn't open the door. I just sat upstairs, lights off, watching the car pull into the driveway. She stood at the door for a while, knocked once, then walked around to the back patio. I didn't answer that either. I couldn't. That night, I drove out to the water again, this time with a photo of the kids in my hand. The one where they're flying kites at Alki Beach, laughing at something I'd said. That day had felt like real life, like something I could hold on to. I sat in that parking lot for hours, gripping that photo like it was all that was keeping me grounded. She could lie to me. She could bleed our accounts dry. But I wasn't going to let her take them. Not our son, not our daughter. Not the only things in this mess I still believed in. And if I had to go to war to protect them, so be it. The next morning I woke up in the car with a sore neck and the picture of the kids still clutched in my hand. The windows were fogged, the sun cutting through in streaks. But I didn't move for a while. I just stared at that photo, burned it into the front of my mind. It wasn't about Alice anymore. Not really. It was about what came next and how much damage I could limit before she dragged the kids down with her. I knew what I had to do. It started with control, real legal control. I reached out to a family lawyer I'd flown with years ago, a guy who now specialized in domestic asset protection. We met at a quiet coffee shop under his office. I handed him every receipt Jake had pulled, every transaction, every shadow account Alice had quietly built under my name. I told him about Devon, the fake business expenses, the wedding photo shoot receipt. I showed him footage from the cameras. He didn't even blink, just nodded, slid the tablet back toward me and said, "We'll start with a financial audit." Within 48 hours, we had movement. Alice had forged my signature months earlier on a second mortgage against our home. I hadn't seen the paperwork because she intercepted it by changing our mailing address with the bank behind my back. The loan had been pushed through, verified by a notary who had no idea the ID she showed wasn't mine. The funds? Gone. Drained into a down payment for a one-bedroom condo on the north end of the city. Devon's name was on the lease. Hers wasn't. I didn't confront her. I didn't storm into the kitchen or scream accusations. I sent the lawyer everything and let the court system do what it was designed to do. Drag her name through the slow mud of truth. I filed a civil lawsuit under my name, and when it came to asset recovery, I demanded compensation for fraud. She wouldn't see it coming, not from me, not when I'd been so silent. 2 days later, our daughter's school hosted its spring art night. Families filled the auditorium, kids in paint-smeared aprons showing off their macaroni sculptures and glitter disasters like they were hanging in the Louvre. Alice showed up late. She wore a low-cut dress and red lipstick like she was trying to distract from something. Devon wasn't with her. She kissed the kids, complimented the paintings, and walked over to me by the snack table with a tight smile. I pulled her aside, behind the theater curtain near the storage area. Just us. She raised an eyebrow like she was expecting a private talk, maybe something dramatic. I handed her a tablet. She looked at it, confused for a second. Then I pressed play. The footage showed her and Devon in our living room, 2 nights ago, cozy on the couch. Her hand on his thigh, his arm wrapped around her waist, laughing, kissing, moving like they owned the place. Her face drained of color instantly. She looked up at me, stunned, like she wanted to say something, but the footage kept playing. I didn't flinch, just stared at her. Then the slap came, sharp, loud. Some heads turned. I didn't say a word. I let her storm off, heels clacking against the tile like gunshots. What she didn't know was that the tablet had already done its job. 5 minutes earlier, I'd left it on the AV table in the gym lobby, screen unlocked, video queued. I knew curious parents would see it. That word would spread fast. And by the time she slapped me, 3 or 4 had already passed it around. Her reputation? Gone. Just like that. But this wasn't revenge. Not yet. This was a warning shot. A flare in the sky telling her she wasn't invisible anymore. She wasn't untouchable. Over the next week, she stopped pretending around the house. No more fake smiles. No more casual texts or half-hearted conversations. She looked at me like she wanted to scream every time we crossed paths, but she held it in. Probably because the lawsuit had arrived. She signed for it at the door and didn't say a damn thing. Just walked back into the house and locked the bathroom door for 2 hours. The kids noticed. They didn't say it, but they felt it. The air was thicker now, like we were all trapped inside a room with no ventilation. Our son kept asking if I was going on another trip soon. Our daughter started sleeping with the door open again. I stayed focused, calm, strategic. Everything about this had to be clean. I canceled every joint account we had my name removed from anything that traced back to her. Meanwhile, Jake kept digging. I asked him to trace not just her money, but her moves, calls, employment records. And that's when he found the last piece. She and Devin weren't just sleeping together. They were building a plan to erase me. Jake intercepted a cloud backup linked to an email Alice used for work, one she thought was private. Inside it was a video, low quality but clear enough. Devin was sitting at my boss's desk, my actual boss's office. Alice stood beside him, laughing. She said something about helping Tom transition out before he screws something up midair. Devin chuckled, added something about gently nudging me toward early retirement before the airline picked up on my mental instability. Their words, not mine. I sat in Jake's living room with the flash drive in my palm, heat crawling up the back of my neck. They weren't just cheating behind my back. They were actively trying to sabotage my career, my license. The one thing I had built on my own without her. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I packed up my things at work the next day, calmly, methodically. Said quiet goodbyes to the crew I trusted. Didn't mention why. No speeches. I left the flash drive in a sealed envelope on my boss's desk with no note. Just the evidence. The next week, Devin disappeared from the office. Nobody knew why. No one mentioned Alice. But that night, just past midnight, I heard a crash. A window shattered downstairs. Kitchen. I came down slow, bat in hand. She was there, barefoot, eyes wild, tears streaming down her face, mascara smeared like black rivers. She screamed something I couldn't make out and knocked over a chair. She saw me standing there and froze. For 1 second, I saw the real her, the rage, the ruin, the way her face had turned sharp and unfamiliar. Then she bolted, slipping on broken glass, limping through the yard. She left behind a torn scrap of paper on the counter. It had only 4 words scribbled in ink. "You ruined everything." I stared at it for a long time. Then I tossed it into the fireplace. No more warnings. She'd made her move. Now it was my turn. After the night she shattered the kitchen window, Alice vanished. No apology, no message. Not even a lawyer at the door to try and spin her version of what had happened. Just silence. And I knew better than to trust silence from her. This wasn't retreat. It was reset. She was still calculating, still watching for an angle. But I wasn't waiting around anymore. I changed every lock on the house before the kids woke up, told them it was a random break-in. Our son gave me a look that said he didn't believe a word of it. Our daughter stayed close to me for days after. I didn't mention their mother, not once. I had no promises to offer about when or if she'd come back. The lawsuit was moving. My lawyer pushed forward, filed for financial control, and began seizing joint assets. Alice didn't respond right away. That told me all I needed to know. She was scrambling, trying to figure out what was still hers to protect. Jake kept digging in the background. He tracked the condo she'd bought for Devin. Place was dark now, utilities shut off, lease still active, but no one coming or going. Looked like Devin had skipped town after being fired. No phone, no online footprint. Just gone. But Alice wasn't finished. She reappeared at mediation, dressed like a widow, sweater too big, eyes rimmed red like she'd been crying for days. She barely looked at me. Her lawyer claimed I'd orchestrated public humiliation, said the hidden cameras and footage had caused her emotional trauma, said I'd manipulated the situation, and now she couldn't show her face in town. But the evidence didn't lie. My lawyer calmly countered every claim: bank records, IP logs, time-stamped videos, the forged mortgage, the missing funds. Her lawyer started to squirm. Alice didn't say much, just twisted her hands in silence and stared at the table. She signed a temporary agreement that gave me full control of the house and froze all joint accounts. No custody decisions yet, but that would come. I thought that might be it. But a week later, human resources from the airline's corporate office called me in. An anonymous report had been submitted, accusing me of accessing secure flight data without clearance. Serious stuff. But I knew exactly where it came from. Alice was making one last attempt to torch my name before I could cut her out completely. She failed. Jake had helped me document every step of my investigation. No airline servers touched, everything pulled legally or through public systems. HR cleared me in 2 days. No warnings, no further action. That was the moment it shifted. Alice's grip started to slip and people noticed. Parents at the kids' school stopped talking to her. She stopped showing up to yoga. A neighbor mentioned seeing her in a nearby park, barefoot, drunk, yelling at no one. I didn't check for myself. Whatever she'd become was her own doing. What hit me most was how the kids handled it. They never asked when she was coming back. Not once. They didn't ask me to call her, didn't cry at night or hold out hope. They just leaned in closer. My son helped in the garage, fixing shelves with me like he'd done it all his life. My daughter clung to me for a few nights, then quietly returned to her room. They understood in ways I hadn't expected. One night after dinner, my son asked if we'd ever go back to the beach where we used to fly kites. I said, sure, someday. He was quiet, then looked up and said, it's better when Mom's not here. I didn't know what to say. I just nodded and held him tight. After she smashed the window and vanished into the dark, I didn't expect peace. Alice wasn't the kind to walk away and leave things clean. But what followed wasn't another outburst or a lawyer at my door. It was something quieter and colder. A manila envelope arrived in the mail. No name, no return address. Inside was a flash drive. I plugged it into my laptop, Jake on the phone, ready in case it was more than just emotional damage. The video was rough, probably shot from a hidden phone, but the office was familiar, my bosses, and there was Devin, lounging in his chair like it was his own, with Alice standing beside him. Their voices were low but clear. They were laughing, plotting. Alice talked about getting me gently pushed out of my job. Said she was feeding HR a story about me losing focus, slipping mentally. Devin added a joke about making sure I didn't snap midair. They acted like I was some nuisance to be swept away. Like my life, my work, everything I'd built was a minor inconvenience in their little fantasy. I didn't scream, didn't break anything. I copied the file to a clean flash drive and drove straight to the airline's main office. I left it on my boss's desk. No message, no warning. Just the truth. That same week I took leave, quietly packed up my gear, cleaned out my locker, and walked away from the job I'd poured 2 decades into. No drama, no fanfare. Jake called me 3 days later. Devin had been let go. No official reason, just gone. And then like clockwork, Alice showed up again. It was just past midnight. I was upstairs when I heard the gate slam, then the unmistakable crash of glass. I went down with my phone already recording. She stood barefoot in the kitchen, wild-eyed, tears streaked down her cheeks, mascara ruined. She was yelling. Nonsense mostly, words thrown like punches at empty space. She knocked over a chair, then froze when she saw me. Just like last time. I didn't speak, just held my phone steady, not blinking. She turned and ran, barefoot over the lawn, gone before I even moved. I locked the door behind her, called it in, trespassing again, told the dispatcher to flag the address. Next time, I wouldn't wait for her to get in. The next morning, a torn scrap of notebook paper was taped to the mailbox. You ruined everything. I didn't even flinch. I pulled it down and burned it in the fire pit behind the garage, watching the last bit of her control turn to smoke. That day, I sat the kids down. I didn't give them every detail, just told them we were leaving Seattle, that we needed a reset, something quieter. They didn't push back. They didn't even look surprised. Maybe they saw it coming before I did. I listed the house within the week and started packing. Found a smaller place in Portland. Fresh, close to a good school, with space for a photo studio. Something simple, something mine. Alice didn't try to stop us. No calls, no letters, no more surprise visits. Maybe she finally saw what she'd lost, or maybe there just wasn't anything left to take. 6 months later, Seattle felt like another life. The fog, the house, the shattered glass, all of it was behind us. I didn't bring it up, not with the kids, not with anyone. Some stories are better left closed once the last page turns. Portland wasn't perfect, but it was quiet, safe, ours. The new house sat on a hill with a modest backyard and a view of the trees. I found a rhythm there, teaching photography workshops at a local arts center, helping the kids with school, rebuilding the day-to-day with hands that had stopped shaking. It didn't feel like survival anymore. It felt like something new, even if it took time to believe in it. Mia came into our lives naturally without pressure or weight. She was a volunteer at the community gallery, soft-spoken, sharp-minded, the kind of woman who didn't ask for attention, but earned it anyway. The kids took to her fast. Our daughter started calling her almost mom before I even realized how deep it had gotten. Mia never tried to take anyone's place. She just stayed, helped, cared. The three of us, me and the kids, learned how to breathe again with her around. No walking on eggshells, no watching the door when it got dark. Just quiet dinners, movie nights, Saturdays in the park with kites and sandwiches and laughter that didn't sound forced. For a while, I thought I was finally free of Alice. Her voice faded, her shadow gone from the walls. I hadn't heard a word from her since the night she vanished barefoot into the dark. Her bank accounts were empty. The court eventually granted me sole custody. She didn't show up to the hearing. But then, one afternoon, I saw her. It was a gray day, cool and silent, the kind where the wind carried everything you didn't want to remember. I was walking alone, cutting through a park I hadn't visited before. And there she was, sitting on a bench under a dying oak tree, barefoot again, her clothes loose and wrinkled, bottle gripped in her hands like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her hair was matted, face pale and sunken. I don't think she even noticed me. She was staring into the trees like they were answering questions no one else could hear. Her hands shook. Her eyes looked hollow. There was no fire left in her, just smoke and ruin. I stood there for a long second, not moving. Part of me expected something to rise. Rage, sorrow, some final flare of pain that never fully healed. But there was nothing, just stillness, and a deep, quiet understanding that I no longer owed her anything. So I walked on. That evening, I stood in the backyard watching the kids fly a kite. Mia beside me, her arm brushing mine. The sky was open, clean, the kind of blue that felt earned, the kind that didn't come easy. Our son was laughing, running barefoot through the grass, the kite dancing high above the trees. Our daughter was shouting instructions, bossy and joyful in a way that made my chest swell. Mia leaned into me, warm and real. I pulled out my camera, snapped a photo. Not for memory, not for proof. Just because it felt like something I never wanted to forget. Mia glanced at me, smiling. "You okay?" I nodded slowly, my eyes on the sky. "Yeah," I said, voice low. "Life's a frame. I've finally learned how to shoot it right. And this time, I wasn't missing the focus." That's all for now, folks. Thank you for being with me today and listened. And if you liked my story, please subscribe, hit the like button, and comment below what you think about all this, and what would you do if you were me. Also, don't forget to check my other stories in description below.